In a display of an obvious disconnect from our nation's educational history, Betsy DeVos recently applauded historically segregated schools as a pioneer of school choice. The Secretary of Education's comments came following a president's meeting with leaders of historically black colleges and universities on Monday. According to many of the HBCU presidents, the meeting did not go as well as they hoped it would. The speakers were reportedly only given 2 minutes to speak, which was eventually cut to 1 minute due to the calls for time restraints. By the end of the visit, only 7 of the 15 HBCU presidents were given an opportunity to speak. Yes, indeed, America, it is true. So President Barack Obama, excuse me, that was a Freudian slip of epic proportion. President Donald Trump decided to meet with HBCUs, as we said in the story there, right? And this is nothing new. Every president in modern history has met with HBCU presidents. HBCUs are pioneers in sort of educating people of color. What makes this so crazy is there was a statement released sort of praising the HBCUs from Betsy DeVos. And in her statement, she says, HBCUs are pioneers in choice. Now, herein lies the problem. Anybody who knows basic American history would tell you that HBCUs were created some on land grants, some privately, some via the AME Church, post the Civil War, right? When they realized during Reconstruction they needed to educate African Americans, but African Americans, freed slaves, were not allowed to go to majority institutions or white people's schools. They were banned. They were segregated from going to them. And then it got worse. Remember, in the Plessy versus Ferguson decision, where the Supreme Court issued a verdict that said separate but equal. So as long as the things are equal, they're allowed to be separate, which is when HBCUs continue to flourish, right? HBCUs have always existed, even to this day, to help educate Americans who cannot or don't want to attend a majority institution. So for Betsy DeVos to make a statement that says HBCUs are the pioneers of choice, not only is outright utter ignorance, but it's rather, I don't want to use the R word because everybody, I think it's really being thrown around too much. But it's either one of three things. Either one, she doesn't understand the basics of American history. Two, she lacks the foresight to, think through what a statement like that means to the broader public. Or three, she doesn't give a damn and she will use everything in her power to circumvent, right, the narrative, to push forward her narrative of private alternatives fix all the problems, right? And it could be one of those three things, and either of those are problematic. I think what's even more problematic is that our HBCUs are suffering, right? These historically black colleges and universities have been the linchpin of upholding the black middle class in America. And the black middle class in America is shrinking. And one of the reasons why they're shrinking is because historically black colleges are closing their doors left, right, and center. Because they're running out of resources, they're running out of money. Students don't have the ability, they're not, some families don't have the ability to pay the full tuition, and a litany of other issues. So if Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos and Kellyanne Conway and Omarosa really cared about historically black colleges and university, they would put their money where their mouth is. The executive order the president issued on HBCUs, to be frank, guys, is rather weak. All it says is we're going to move there's like a sort of a group, there's an office that focuses on HBCUs. We're going to move that office to be under the management of somebody in the White House, move it out of the Department of Education, and we're going to create better partnerships between historically black colleges and universities and government. What the presidents were asking for, the 20 some odd presidents, they were asking for, can you set aside 5% of federal grants to go to HBCUs, which totals a lot of money, which in a lot of places would uplift many of these universities and cause them closing their doors, right? Because the research, to be frank with you guys, that happens at Harvard can also happen at Howard. And the research that happens at Yale can also happen at Hampton. And the research that happens in Brown can happen at Bethune-Cookman College in Florida. Right? So if we decide, if the United States really cared and our government cared about HBCUs, which in turn means caring about black people and black people getting an education and contributing more to our country, then they would put their money where their mouth is and make a positive investment in these universities. Donald Trump, in this picture behind me, if you're watching this on YouTube, is putting on a show to convince the American people that he's not a racist. And that's why what we saw this week on whitehouse.gov is they put an article that was written by some organization that said, some journalist organization that said, Trump tries to outdo Obama on HBCUs. This is not about an outdoing or doing more or doing less for HBCUs. This is about making sure that HBCUs exist for the next generation of African American students. And sadly, Mr. President, you're failing miserably. Very, very miserably.